I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about Kaili Blues.
Before we get into this week's film, next week we're going to be watching The Lost in America, an Albert Brooks film. Is there any reason why you were pulled to Albert Brooks?
I like him. I've seen I've seen almost all of his movies, like the
And
movies that he directed.
you've seen Lost in America before, right?
I have seen Lost in America before, but it's been maybe like a couple of years now since I've seen it, and I love his movies.
Okay.
They're the best. And I saw that was on Criterion, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's nothing but I love his movies. They're so funny.
Well, I'm excited. We're gonna have good times. It's gonna be lots of fun. This week we watched. Is it pronounced Kaylee? Kylie? I've been pronouncing Kylie, but that's probably wrong. Is it pronounced Kaylee? How do you pronounce?
I don't know.
I don't know. We're not the people to ask. But we did watch
Hmm.
this film by Bygone. It's a feature debut, which it's been a minute since we've done a feature debut. And I think there's something very specific about feature debuts, and especially feature debuts from young filmmakers. He was 26 when he made this film. So he was just a young lad when he made this film, and it definitely has that guerrilla style independent filmmaking vibe to it, right? Definitely someone who just grabbed a camera and went and shot something. And I think there is a lot to be impressed by with this film. And I was watching it with Henry. So the tough thing about this is Henry's at a point in his life where sitting is not something he does anymore. So he's constantly moving. So it's trying to keep
Yeah.
track of what's going on in the film because this film does not hold your hand necessarily and tell you what's going on. And you definitely have some needed attention for this film because it's kind of weaving through time in this interesting way. And there's some of these really beautiful lines that kind of run like poetry. Like there's a lot of this just language, and there's not really a lot of dialogue. Like they're almost they're not really talking to each other. They're kind of just all giving these monologues, these beautiful monologues, right? And just like this very poetic style of telling these things that are going on. And I guess what I'm grasping from it is so our protagonist, he was in, which we don't learn until well into the film, right? He was in prison for 9 years because he helped a gangster with some
Yeah, he's like a former gangster, and now he's a
like,
doctor.
and now he's a doctor. And so he's in jail for 9 years, and then he's looking for, it's not his son, but it's like his like sister's who Wei Wei. He's looking for Wei Wei.
Yes, it's his nephew. It's his brother's
Nephew.
son.
Okay, his brother's son. That's what I knew there was a family connection there.
And in his brother's name Crazy Face, which is funny. Yeah, but I don't think he just got out of prison. That's not the idea. Like I think he's been out of prison and he's been working as a doctor and he's like a reformed gangster.
Hmm.
When he's looking for Wei Wei, he has disappeared because he's worried that his brother has sold him.
Right.
But then he finds out that he was actually taken by somebody else, a mentor,
Hmm.
Monk, I think is his name.
Yeah.
And so then he leaves to go find him. Yeah,
And I think the reason that I kind of struggled to grasp what was going on for a while is partly because the dialogue isn't very straightforward, right? They're not really telling you what's going on. It's kind of we're just living in his life and we're capturing these bits and pieces, and there's this way that it's playing with time too, right? It's not obviously there's certain scenes that have to be told linearly, is particularly the oner that goes on forever and ever and ever. That's linear, but it's definitely jumping between times. Like there's that moment where he's walking out of the jail and like there's that drive home and he has that beautiful conversation or driving, I guess, to his new home. And I love that shot because it's neither of them, right? It's just a shot of It just looks like they got a camera and put it behind a windshield, and we're just watching them drive through this beautiful forested green place,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just
like
driving through
the
fog.
locations do a lot of work, I would say. 'Cause it's like I've seen like not a lot of Chinese movies, but a decent amount. And they usually take place in places like in cities like Hong Kong and Beijing, I feel like.
Hmm.
And if it is in the countryside, it's usually because people in the city are visiting the countryside. Um, I like this movie because it's like it takes place in the countryside and it features people who are definitely not actors, but they do live and are from there, and that is very convincing. So it's kind of nice to like watch like a movie like this that is very that kind of inhabits a place pretty well, a place that I'm unfamiliar with, which is definitely like I mean it's like yeah in the middle of China,
Yeah,
mainland China, and it looks like really awesome. It's kind of funny. It kind of like it's like it doesn't look too different than like Appalachia, America, kind of,
hmm,
but
yeah,
like
yep.
the infrastructure there is like much better. You know what I mean? It's clearly like in the middle of nowhere, but
Well,
the infrastructure there, it doesn't look like brand new or anything like that. You
yeah.
see them kind of like you can like like interiors maybe look a little dusty or a little
Mhm.
chipped, but at least, it doesn't look terrible to live there. You know what I mean? It doesn't look like they're not in abject poverty, right? So
No.
I just thought that was kind of like a funny thing I noticed. But it still has a kind of like creaky, kind of like, again, chipped quality to it that is also very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it helps. It definitely helps with framing and just filming a picture when you're shooting in a place that's just it's just really beautiful, right? There's just a lot of very beautiful locations. And of course there's location scouting and all that going into it, but it definitely feels like there was a lot of we're like a lot of moments in the film that feel like they were capturing something rather than they had planned it out beforehand. I mean, I'm thinking back again to that shot where they're having that conversation and the camera's just pointing out the window and they're
Yep.
driving through the fog. I mean, I'm
Yeah, it's
sure
so
it's
good.
foggy there a lot, but I'm sure part of it is just like, holy shit, this looks beautiful, right? Like we have to capture this while we can, and it's a lot of like stealing those shots, grabbing those shots wherever you can, and kind of just living in the moment. And you can tell a lot of shots are stolen because every now and then you will see like children in the frame, or you'll see an adult in the frame that kind of looks to the camera and is very clearly like not aware of what's going on.
Well, yeah, they're like well, especially like in the long take. I mean,
Yeah.
the game is given away maybe a few times. Like, first of all, I don't think anyone's like an amazing actor in the movie. Everybody kind of,
Mm-mm.
and especially in the long take, people act a little stiffly.
Yeah.
And there are moments where it's clear that cameraman is kind of moving around in order to like adjust,
Yep.
right? Like because they might have like slipped or something like that. So there are things like that that you notice. But like I don't know. That's being a little bit too much of a hater because it's like, I mean, it's a lot of work. So uh having to like basically go like on a hike for 40 something minutes with like camera and sound equipment and stuff like that, and to try to get like some halfway decent performances out of these people
Yeah.
is a challenge. So I give credit where credit is due. Does it necessarily need to be as long as it is, or
Mhm.
you know I mean, I don't know. That I'm not. I don't know. Like it's good. Like the long take portion. The movie up to that point is actually very beautiful and very well composed.
Agreed. I mean,
Like
there's
yeah,
that really beautiful shot where, and there's a lot of this. There's a lot of stuff playing with mirrors and kind of looking in windows. And there's this one incredible shot. It's one of my favorite shots in the film. And it's a shot of, it's a super wide shot of kind of overlooking the city. And he pulls, because what's incredible is really up to the oner. Almost everything is on sticks. It's very still, very long single takes, which is a very interesting choice to take with non-actors because typically when you're working with non-actors, you do something like Sean Baker and you do a lot of handheld stuff, right? You're cutting a lot because you're trying to cut around those performances because they're not actors. But here, Bygone's like, I'm gonna just sit with my performers where I have these really long takes, and there's this one take where they're overlooking the city, and you just see the little tiny, it takes up a little space of the frame is the mirror, and all of the action is going on in the mirror. And it is
Yeah,
so
that's great.
weird and strange. And there's a lot of shots like this, right, where they're using mirrors
Yeah,
and they're using
they use mirrors.
frames within frames. And so that,
Yeah. I noticed that like in the I noticed too they do like I don't know what you would call it like a swivel shot or something
mhm.
like that where the camera doesn't move around, it just spins around,
Mm,
right? So
yep,
it'll start at one
like
thing
the
and then the
opening.
characters like the opening, yeah, like and the one where he gets like the bike, he gets the bike from the guy.
Yep.
It like it will track. It'll just spin around and track the characters as they move around, even if they disappear behind a wall.
Yeah.
It'll still like follow them, which I find to be um, I like those a lot. Or like there's that one scene where he fights people, I think in the Mahjong hall, and they're fighting. They like start fighting, and then the camera immediately moves over to something nondescript, like on a table nearby.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff like that that's very interesting. To be
Hmm.
honest, I find those moments more interesting and compelling than the 40-minute long uh I get like it has an effect and I think the effect is like there.
Uh-huh.
I just kind of prefer the other stuff more in terms of like filmmaking, I guess, because I don't know. I get it's a dream, right? Like he's having a dream,
Hmm.
and so I get where it's like coming from, but it sounds like I'm being a hater about it, but like I just like that first I don't know, like half of the movie or so is just like
Yep.
really, really compelling. And you're
Hmm.
kind of like, whoa, what's going on? You know, and it's so beautiful. And that location of Kali, because they're in Kali and then they leave,
Yep.
is like really awesome. Although the village that they go to later is really great too. Kind of like the mysterious village that's
Hmm.
sort of outside of the village he's trying to get to in order to get see Wei Wei.
Yeah.
Um and but yeah,
Yeah, I'm a bit torn on the whole thing because I also agree that up to that point the film is just it's just absolutely gorgeous and beautiful and patient, and I'm just kind of sitting there kind of living in the moment, right, kind of watching these things happen. uh of course that long scene has more dream-like than the rest of the film, but even the film as a whole, right, there's this haziness to it, and sort
yeah,
of it's following these dream-like rules, right? It's not following the traditional, like, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and this is gonna happen, and this is gonna happen. And I love those moments where the camera will move, but it's not necessarily moving to follow the character, or like, right, the character will move behind something and they'll just kind of allow the obstruction to be there. And
yeah,
it creates this sense of as if the camera itself is this character that's kind of watching
yeah,
these people move and move around.
yeah,
And with the 40-minute oneer, like, yes, it's impressive, right? To Because it's not just like they're on sticks for 40 minutes, and it's not just they're at a single location, right, walking around. Like they drive around a whole gosh darn
yeah,
village. Like they're going on boats, they're going on motorcycles, they're going on trucks, and it's impressive. It is. Like, from a technical standpoint, that's a very impressive thing to do, not just from the
yeah.
sense of like having to follow them around and figure out like
They
how
go,
we're gonna
they
get
go,
the camera
yeah, it's
here,
crazy.
but just to coordinate the whole thing, right? To make sure like the band's in the place when they're supposed to be, and make sure these people are here and that people there. Like, the coordination is incredible. However, just like you, in my opinion, the 40-minute oneer is the weakest part of the film, and I do
It
think
is, yeah.
it does have an effect, but it's just when you have a great eye, like, because the problem for me for the oneer is you really can't frame it up in the same way, or you can't really create these beautiful still frames in the way that you can with the other stuff. And because they're moving around so much, right? Because the location is changing so much, you're not getting it just doesn't look as good. And you're not
Yeah, it's
getting like
fine. Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
performances aren't as strong because it's like some of these people performing for a long time, right? Or it's like, if you
Yeah.
screw up, right, you have to go do a whole 40 minutes again. And there's definitely that, like, well, do we do a whole another 40-minute take, or do we kind of just call it good? And then, of course, you can see that they're using like Adobe Premiere Stabilizer, because you can see it kind of warp a couple of times throughout the
Yeah.
film, which is fine, right?
That's what
It's
I'm
like
saying. It's just like, yeah,
you're a
kind of,
26-year-old kid, younger than us, right? You're making your movie, you're doing your thing. It's impressive. Like, it's an impressive oneer technically, but for me it definitely feels like, and I don't think, and what's interesting, I don't think this is a film that's trying to do this as a whole. And I think this is often the case with debut films, is filmmakers trying to prove themselves. They're like, I'm a good enough
yeah,
filmmaker. Like, look
that's
what I
true.
can do. And I feel that 40-minute one take feels a bit like that. Where the rest of the film, I don't think does that. I think the rest of the film definitely allows itself to kind of breathe and live in the moment and be there. But the 40-minute one take definitely feels a bit like, look what I can do, right?
It does feel a little showy and flashy. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's I do like how it ends, right?
Beautiful.
Where he's like, it feels like a dream. It's like it turns out the kid is like way way. It's
Hmm.
like, and it ends on the, and then it ends on the line like it feels like a dream. I like that. I like the ending of the Warner a
Hmm.
lot. Uh, yeah, I think that's a very beautiful way to end it. And I like the scene where he sings too. Like there are things about there are moments in it that are amazing, right? Like when
Yeah.
he gets his hair done
Hmm.
and it's
Hmm.
like his wife,
And he
right?
tells that story. Yeah.
And he tells a story to his wife, right? Like about how they met.
Hmm.
Uh, which that's a great performance and that's a great moment. And then he sings a song later and that's a really great and beautiful moment too. Um and the relationship between like Wei Wei and the girl too. I found that really compelling too. I thought that was really well done and really sweet. Um, there are things about it that I think are really great. Whether or not it needs to be one take is up for debate.
Yeah.
But whatever. Like I'm not really it's not really like a hill I'm gonna like die on because
No.
it's like you did it. So, congratulations. You know what I mean? So um and yeah, and that's just how it is. But I think the movie before that is just so much stronger, it's just so much it's just so much more like kind of like wow, like captivating in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um but uh yeah, but again, it sounds like a hater and I'm not hating.
No, I completely agree. I think it's just the film is so strong up to that point that it's kind of hard to keep up with that beauty for a
Yeah.
whole film. And I think that that's really where it struggles is and I think it goes back like after like that dream sequence ends and everything after that kind of has that same feeling as before, which is just
Yeah.
again just absolutely beautiful and you just get these just incredible beautiful wide shots. There's not a lot of close-ups in this film. I mean, there's definitely someone who's very interested in filling the frame with things, and
Hmm.
this is something that I have been sort of more pulled to and interested in lately. Of course, like when we talked about Playtime, which is one of my favorite films, right? Someone who Jackie was someone who was very interested in kind of filling the whole frame with things, not very interested in the close-up, and there's not a lot of close-ups here. And I think what's so interesting about that is I think there are a lot of filmmakers that utilize the close up, particularly like that super hyper shallow focus to hide the frame, right? It's to hide things. They're doing it
Hmm.
because like, oh, look, that's cinematic, right? That looks pretty. It's something my boss uses all the
Yeah.
time. Whenever he sees like a shallow focus, he's like, look how cinematic that is. It's
Yeah.
like just because you have a shallow focus doesn't make it cinematic, right? How is this adding to the story and what is this saying about the story? And I think way too often, particularly in those like modern, really bland films, right, who just utilize that shallow focus because it looks cinematic, but there's no point to it, right? Like just because it looks
Yep.
cool does not mean it adds something to the story. And a lot of this film is using a really deep focus, using these really wide lenses, using these big locations, and being patient and having these long takes, which I think takes a certain amount of confidence. Because I think as filmmakers, often the reason we cut is we're terrified that our audience is going to get bored, right? So like
Yeah.
we're cutting to all these singles and mids and we're cutting to the wide and we cut, right? We just cut very quickly. And this is a type of film where they're like, no, we're just going to sit here. We're going to wait. We're going to allow the whole scene to play out. I mean, very rarely does a scene have the camera in multiple locations. Like once we're at a scene, that's pretty much where the camera's going to stay. Maybe it might tilt, maybe it'll pan, maybe it'll spin around, but that's pretty much where the camera's going to be for the whole
Yeah.
scene. And some of these scenes do go on for like, not just the oneers, but I mean, all of the scenes in here. Like, there's no short scenes, there's no like cuts to like over the shoulders. It's just it's shooting the set rather than just shooting the one character. And I find that fascinating and being willing to be in that space. And it does require a little bit of patience and a little bit of focus as a viewer, because I think when you have those quick cuts, you can kind of turn off your brain a little bit because you're just so
Yeah.
used to it, right? And you get that fast-paced kind of movement. Where here you are a lot of the time just trying to figure out what's going on, because as I was saying earlier with the dialogue here, and this is one of the things I love most about the film, is it feels like these are just, and it helps that they're not actors, is it feels like these are just people living their lives and we're kind of capturing, we're just in the middle of it, right? They're
Yeah.
not here trying to explain, here's what's going on and here's the next thing we're
Yeah.
going to do, right? Here's the MacGuffin.
Yeah.
It's as if like we just jumped into the middle of someone's life
Hmm.
and now we're kind of following him on this adventure
Yeah.
as he tries to find Wei Wei. And we get bits and pieces right as the film goes along of like, oh yeah, this is happening, that's happening. We're trying to understand different things that are going on, but it never feels ambiguous either, right? It never feels ambiguous to be ambiguous. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is a big secret that we're trying to keep from you, from the audience, right? And we're gonna have this big reveal at the end. But rather, these are just people living their lives, and we're kind of just following them around. And I think the camera's doing that same thing by having these sort of long still takes.
Yeah.
Is I very much feel like, oh, I'm kind of just living this life with him, right? I think of when we watched Monrovia, Indiana, and those beautiful documentaries where we're kind of just sitting there with these people. There's no talking heads, there's no one explaining anything to you. You're just kind of there living in the moment. And then this is definitely more structured than say Monrovia, Indiana, but there is a bit of that, particularly in the way that it's shot and these long, slow takes, and just watching you know, uh, given like a very simple MacGuffin, right? Find Wei Wei. Like as long as you have that, like that's the one thing that's kind of leading us through everything else, and everything else is just allowed to kind of we get to move in these different worlds and these different places, and and explanations are kind of given at different points throughout the film, and then that's interesting with the edit too. Is like the way they deliver information, right? Like we see him walk out of the jail before he ever talks about like why he was in jail. We see him sit by that pond. And so there's this way it's playing with memory too, right? The way memories exist in our mind is it's not this linear thing, but rather it's kind of all jumbled up in the middle. And right, he sits at that pond, and then later he talks about how, oh yeah, every day, right? You'd look at that pond from his prison, but the pond it's like radioactive. Like it's full of
Yeah.
chemicals.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's like the point of the dream sequence, right? Is that like
Mhm.
it's a mixture of the past and the present and the future because when you watch it, you feel you're lulled into thinking that like this is the present time
Right.
because he's trying to get from to a certain point to a different location in order to achieve his goal, which is find the young Wei Wei. But then he meets Wei Wei, but he's older,
Hmm.
and he also meets his past wife who died. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I also find it. I was thinking about just now, like that conversation that he has with his brother about Wei Wei, about him selling him, quote unquote, selling him,
Hmm.
and I do think that's one of the more compelling aspects of the film, kind of like his relationship to his nephew, because he's sort of like his father,
Yeah.
because his father is kind of like not a great father.
No.
Um, and it's sort of like a kind of like a forgiveness and redemption thing, right?
Yeah.
Right, like the because and his brother kind of like pokes at that a little bit, which is a very good scene where he's sort of pointing out the fact that like he feels guilty about like being a gangster, missing out on his dead wife, and also missing out on his dead mother, right? Like I think like he
Yeah.
wasn't there for his dead mother. And the brother's upset at him because he's like, I deserve like the house or whatever, and you get to have the house. And he's like, well, you can have the house. I don't really care.
Yeah.
And what does he say? He says something like, well, it shouldn't have been yours in the first place, or something
Yeah.
like that.
It's
Like
not yours to give, something like that. Yeah.
it wasn't yours to give, which is very good. Which is very that's very great. But yeah, that part is kind of interesting. How he kind of maybe he's like sort of like chasing down Wei Wei and trying to make sure that he's okay. Maybe out of a sense of like feeling that out of a sense of like forgiveness, or like
Mm,
he's like maybe seeking some kind of redemption, which you could also maybe like connect that to his profession of being a doctor, right? Like helping people instead of like hurting people. Um, I find all those aspects like very interesting. And sort of how that sort of is like, but again, all that stuff is before the long take as well. you know, so but again, the long take it's not in reality, right? It's like
Yeah.
sort of like that's kind of like what dreams are, in my opinion, right? They're kind of like a mishmash, a meld
Mhm.
of things kind of like mixed together, and they sort of like translate in your brain to some semblance maybe of like a
Yeah.
narrative or a story or a moment in your mind. Um, so yeah, like there's a lot of like endlessly compelling stuff, which, in a way, you kind of wish that he would go even farther with some of those things. Because the movie basically ends of him realizing he was dreaming,
Mhm.
right? And that's great. But again, like our view and it also ends with him like seeing like his his son, his nephew,
Mhm.
right? You see him one last time and he realizes that he's okay.
Yeah.
And that's very beautiful as well. Um, but yeah, you kind of do wish it went a little bit farther, but I get that's not necessarily the point, right? The point, like, it's not a very plot heavy movie, which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think we've watched a lot of movies for the podcast where the plot isn't besides the point, but I think it kind of misses the point. And especially with the oner is it's about that dreamlike sequence and the way that we build meaning afterwards, right? The way in which when we're kind of living the dream, like none of it really makes sense, and we're kind of just wandering around, and it's weird. But it's not until after the dream that we kind of make sense of it, and that's how I think of the ending, right? After he meets Wei Wei in those last few scenes in which we actually see that Wei Wei's okay, and he's been taken by this guy, and he's going to like a school or whatever.
Yeah.
Is it's him kind of like coming to terms with the dream and making a narrative, making a story out of this dream, and figuring out what this dream was. And I love the idea that this is a film about forgiveness, right? The finding
Yeah.
of Wei Wei, in part, of course, is his fear and worry for Wei Wei, which is very much true. And I'm sure anyone would be when you sell your child to pay off gambling debts, I think is
Yeah,
what it was,
I don't know.
or something
Yeah,
like
like
that.
selling children's like what the fuck?
Not
Selling? Like
great.
what's going on?
Not not
Like,
something that I'm really into, but but there is that real sense of like figuring out how to come to terms with the death because I think it's not just the forgiveness of his brother though that's certainly like a big part of finding Wei Wei is like finding a way to forgive someone who has hurt you, but then also like finding the sense of forgiving himself and
yeah.
this life that he has led and trying to do these things for his wife and his family in which that he's failed, right? He's kind of failed his family and trying to make something of his life. And there's that interesting conversation when they're inside the dream of when they talk about being a doctor. Why do we, what's the point of being a doctor? People are just going to get sick again, right? There's sort of like, no matter what you do, it's kind of cyclical. It's all just going to happen again and again and again. And yet there's kind of this pushback that, yeah, people like are gonna be unhappy and people are gonna hurt, but we as humans, like our job is sort of to to find that momentary happiness and to find that peace. And I think of that scene where the three kids are walking down
Yeah.
it almost looks like a rice field, or maybe it's
Mhm.
just it looks like a marsh of some kind, right? And they're walking in that wooden way, and it's just like beautiful. It's a beautiful moment of just like capturing uh, joy and happiness. And I think that's one of the things that comes with working with child non-actors. I always find that child non-actors usually typically like do better than adult non-actors because they don't have that uncomfortableness around a camera, right? They kind of haven't built that sense of self-consciousness that comes when you're in fourth, fifth, sixth grade. And so they're just like very comfortable and kind of just living their lives. And it's like, oh yeah, like that's the thing. Like way, like he did it. Like the thing wasn't to you think the thing of the film when you're watching it is, oh, he's gonna find Wei Wei, he's gonna save him, right? He's gonna take him home. But it's such an interesting choice to be like, no, that's not the point, right? The point
Yeah.
is to find the forgiveness in his brother and his family, and finding Wei Wei is that way to know that he's okay and to find that acceptance in himself, right? To accept who he's been and who he is, and who he wants to be. And so this whole film is him coming to terms with that and fighting that and kind of having that frustration without it being like, having straight dialogue where he's like, "Ah, I was a gangster and I don't want to be a gangster anymore."
Yeah.
But rather kind of having this internalness in the film where we're kind of just watching him deal with these things because while the performances are definitely varying, I do love our protagonist. Like I think he gives a really beautiful and touching performance. Is like, he's able to express sort of the frustration and the sadness without it being perhaps the traditional sort of over the top, right? We're giving these big feelings. I think sometimes you need a smaller performance and sometimes there's a lot of value in that. And not that there isn't moments of like anger and frustration and sadness, but like I think of those last moments when he's on the train,
Yeah.
and it's just so beautiful, right? Just kind of watching him, that take of the train moving by, and he's kind of there, and we're just kind of sitting there with him for a moment. And I think what's so great about these non-actors is because maybe their performances aren't necessarily to the levels of the great actors of the 20th and 21st century. We as a viewer kind of have this ability to lay our own emotions onto them, right? Just like in every conversation, we're kind of always kind of laying our own layer of stuff on top of it. That's how I felt with a lot of this film, is kind of putting my own shit on the table and reflecting it from him and looking back and forth. And it's just real beautiful and touching. It made me very happy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good movie. Yeah. And yeah. I appreciate a movie that's willing to like kind of like talk about dreams in this way. Um, I think it's always an endlessly interesting subject. Especially like with like movies. I don't know why, it just is. Um, yeah. It's a movie that's really good, but like we said, like there's something kind of film festival-y about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like a movie that was like made for to appeal to like
Yep.
film festivals. That sounds so mean, but like I don't know.
I think, well, and this is something, I went to a film screening last night of not a new film. It was like a film that came out a long time ago, but there's this community of filmmakers, right? They kind of all came together for this film screening because there's this new push to start a movie theater here in town again, which is it's cool to see and maybe a little depressing after me and Brandon and yours own adventures into that world. But there is definitely like, and I feel this in this film, and I think this is true with a lot of directorial debuts. And I talked about this at the beginning of the podcast too, which there's this sense of needing to kind of prove yourself and prove you're worthy. And it's a tough world to navigate because there's definitely, because like I've come to terms for me with the fact that like I'm perfectly happy with never having a film go to, Cannes or Sundance or those kind of things. Like I want to make movies for the rest of my life and I would like to make a living from it. But I think when I was younger, there was definitely like, I'm gonna make it as a filmmaker. I'm gonna make it big. I'm gonna be a big Hollywood director, and that was like an ambition that I had for a very long time. And there's certain things that you have to do, right? Certain kind of rules you have to follow. It has to play the film festival. Right? You kind of have to have your shtick, your thing that makes it like, ooh,
Yeah.
like this is film festival worthy. Whatever like you're kind of pushing the edges of, whether it's like the 40-minute oneer or you're talking about a really complicated topic or whatever your shtick is. And I was kind of obsessed with that for a while. And then there's a lot of filmmakers, in this town, and I'm sure in every town, that have that sense of, oh, we got to make a thing that film festivals will like because that's how you make it, right? Because even now, like, sometimes you get lucky, right? You put something on YouTube and a bunch of people see it, and, some big studio comes and buys you out. But like most of the time, you still got to go the festival route. That it's still the way that the film industry works. And so there's a lot of people who make films for this. And I think I've gotten to a point in my life, and now that I'm a father, that I'm very happy to make movies and I get to do it a lot. I'm very grateful for the fact that, I have the time to make not just the movies that I make for work, which maybe is my favorite thing in the world, but to make narratives and to make features and to make films that I care about. And I no longer have that sense of I need to make this to prove this thing. And if there is any flaws in this film, and it can't be a perfect film, right? I mean, it's a film made by a 26-year-old kid. I mean, there's a reason, right? There's no world-renowned 26-year-old filmmakers. Like you're still figuring out your shit. I think filmmaking is one of those things. It's similar to writing, right? Like famous novelists usually aren't famous in their 20s, and it just takes time to sort of tell stories and kind of become part of the craft. And there's a reason, right? Like Kurosawa and Hitchcock, right? They make 40, 50 movies in their career because it's just the practice of making of the films and then kind of living
Yeah.
life and that sort of thing. And I think the biggest weakness of this film is there's a bit of wanting to prove himself as a filmmaker, as everyone wants to do, especially with their first directorial debut. And I understand the logic of the oner, and I understand the idea of it. And again, technically, it's impressive, but is that the best way to tell that story? I'm not sure, especially relative to the rest of the film. Does it connect to the rest of the film in the same way? And I know it's supposed to separate itself, right? Because that's like the dream sequence, and so it has to have that difference of it.
Yeah.
But and right, he might just be hurting himself in the sense that the rest of his film is so good that's sort of hard to live up to his own standards with that part, and it's just hard to find like that beautiful framing with these long takes and to kind of create that beauty that you have with the rest of the film, and especially with working with non-actors. So it's still impressive. I think it's very impressive as a film, and I think it's a very beautiful film, especially outside of that 40-minute one. Or like there's just everything up to that point. I'm just like this is just like I'm overwhelmed by it in this very touching and beautiful way. And you really have to give kudos for the filmmaker for being willing to make a film like this to kind of make slow cinema, as I saw some people call it, where we are a bit more patient in the film and. I love it. I do. I love a lot about this film, and I just really enjoyed kind of having that experience and kind of slowing down and kind of being there in the moment, especially with someone
Yeah.
like Henry who is just constantly moving around, right? He's moving in a thousand different directions, and so kind of having a slower paced film uh, was nice.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Yeah. I'm gonna try to they're gonna play Resurrection around here soon, so I'm gonna go see it and I'll report back.
Please do.
Um, I've heard mixed things about it. I've seen some pretty negative reviews about it. So if it's worse than this movie, then it's not gonna be good. Not that I didn't like this movie. I liked it.
Yeah,
It's just like um I've just seen a lot of like negative stuff about Resurrection. Um, so but I'm interested. I'm very curious about it.
yeah. Yeah, I'll have to report back. I'm excited. I'm excited for you to see it
Yeah.
and to hear what you have to say.
Chinese movie.
He does have another film on Criterion, so I'm hoping to. What's the other film it's
Yeah,
on?
I'm not.
Oh.
It's like a Long Day's Journey into the Night or something like that. It has like the same title as that one. It kind of has the same title as that one Celine novel, but I don't think it's based off the Celine novel.
Oh. Okay.
Um, so I might watch that too. I
Yeah.
didn't watch it before the show,
I
but
haven't
I
watched it
might
yet.
watch it before. I might watch it before I go see the movie because it's just kind
That's
of
good.
that's like the only other kind of feature he has, I think, before this new one.
Yeah, he has. I
So
mean, because the first one came out in 2015, so this is only his. He's still
yeah,
got time, even if Resurrection isn't his best film, he's still got some time to make some movies. So.
well, we'll see about that. We'll see if he's a hack or not. Okay, I'll be the judge of whether or not he's like a straight up hack. Um, I'll be the judge,
The official judge
but
of
I'll be the
hackery.
judge of whether or not he's the yeah. But yeah, no, I'll report back.
Awesome. Well, I think that about wraps up all of my thoughts, feelings, and
Yeah, I think
opinions
so too.
on this. So I'll end by saying I am very impressed by the technical aspects of this film, and I'm very impressed that a 26-year-old made this film, that this is the directorial debut. But the things that I am impressed with on a technical sense are also the things that I think hurt the film the most. I think there's this sort of self-consciousness to the film, this need to be wanted, this need to impress that weakens the film a bit rather than just being like we're just gonna make a beautiful film and touching. And there are a lot of beautiful moments in it. And as you know, I like to adjust the way I rate films every year. And last year, my thing was I wasn't going to rate any movies a seven, and I was strong to that. Last year, I didn't rate a single movie. You know, watched like 200 movies, didn't rate a single one seven. And I want to hold to that. No more sevens. But I want to add a wrinkle to that, which is for me like the difference between a six and an eight now is an eight is something that I want to rewatch, and a six is something that like I enjoyed, but I'm probably never going to watch it again. And so when I'm thinking about this film when I first left the film, I was kind of sitting at a six, not because it isn't a beautiful film, there isn't beautiful moments, but just because it did have that film festival quality to it that kind of put me off a little bit. But sitting with it a little bit more, especially like thinking because everything around like I to me the Wonder is the least interesting part of the film. And I think we talked a lot about the Wonder in this, and I think it's
Yeah.
important to talk a lot about it in this. But I do want to rewatch it. You know, it is a film that I would like to watch again just because there's a lot that happens before the one that I'm just really interested in and kind of want to relive and revisit. And there's just really beautiful language in this. You know, it kind of reminds me of a Bergman film in the kind of these discussions uh, and these pulls from like poetry and stuff that's really beautiful. And I hate calling something poetic, right? Uh, that kind of like always pisses me off as English majors attempting to do this MFA is like when someone call like language poetic because that doesn't it's a meaningless word. Like it has no value. It has no meaning to call something poetic. Like that doesn't mean anything. You're not like that doesn't define anything. But I think there's something beautiful in the language itself. And of course it's a translation, so you're never gonna get the full beauty of it, but it kind of has that Bergman-esque quality of kind of just talking about language and words and using words in this really interesting way. And that's something that I've been sitting with for a while, and I kind of just want to jump into those moments. So yeah, it's light. I'm gonna give it a light 8 out of 10.
Wow. I would give it like more like a six.
Yeah.
But it's a very like a very I want to say like a very gracious six. Like I think it's good. Like I think it's
Yeah.
really good. It just it's just like a movie that like you watch it like so many movies. It's like even something as good as this is just kind of like I wouldn't say it falls flat for me. It just doesn't like reach the heights that I'm typically want in a
Yeah.
really great movie, right?
Hmm.
So, um, it's got all of the things that I would want, but it just doesn't resonate with me like super hard.
Yeah.
But it's a great movie and everyone should see it. It's good. It's chill. It has great vistas, great locations.
Hmm.
Like you said, great dialogue. I love, yeah, the best parts of the movie I think are like when are like yeah, like the conversations
Hmm.
and yeah, like the wonder, it needs to be seen to be believed. I think it's great. I think
Yeah.
it's a triumph. And yeah, no, I think it's like a good movie.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. You can find this podcast where you hear podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at With Nothing to Say. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks again.